Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the Detroit Lions looking for a cornerback, right? Their secondary wasn't very good last season, and despite improving drastically from the start of the year to the end of the year, they still weren't a very good unit even on their best games. So, with the Detroit Lions having some questions at the cornerback position, the free agency market not being super great at cornerback, as well as not necessarily maybe wanting to rely on a rookie talent, the Detroit Lions are left with a big situation. Do they go for a blockbuster trade? Do they look to trade for a superstar cornerback in this year's class, or do they look to draft a rookie or sign a free agent or just go with what they have? Now today, we're going to be talking about that situation. We're going to talk about two potential cornerbacks, two potential superstar cornerbacks that the Detroit Lions could have their eyes on for 2023 that would instantly upgrade the secondary and be the difference between potentially a wild card game and a division title. So with that being said, let's get right on into taking a look at two potential superstars the Lions could be interested in trading for. Now, before we get into the first player, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Yes, this very much goes against what Brad Holmes has done over the first 2 years. Brad Holmes has been somebody that builds through the draft, somebody that doesn't spend big in free agency, doesn't make blockbuster trades, doesn't do a whole lot outside of the draft to go get a ton of talent, or at least not get a ton of superstars. But if you think back to the Matthew Stafford trade, he did offer and try to acquire Aaron Donald. So it's not that he's never tried to make a blockbuster trade. He just maybe has been a little bit over the top on some of them. But I think part of it was also the situation that the team was in. And now that the team is ready to win and the team's ready to compete for a division title, trading for a superstar makes significantly more sense now than it has over the last 2 years when you're picking top 10 in the draft and coming off a 3-13-1 season. So, with that being the case, I think it's more realistic than ever that Brad Holmes makes a blockbuster trade, and I think these are the two most likely candidates. First of which being Jalen Ramsey, the former two-time All-Pro cornerback for the Jacksonville Jaguars as well as the Los Angeles Rams, has publicly stated that he's not sure whether or not he'll return to Los Angeles. Now, he is under contract for 3 more seasons. He's under contract until 2025 with a $17 million salary cap hit every single year. Now, Jalen Ramsey is a great football player. Jalen Ramsey is somebody that, as I said, is a former two-time All-Pro coming in the 2020 and 2021 seasons. He had a little bit of a down year, but statistically wasn't any worse than he was in his All-Pro season just 2 years ago, and he's still playing at a very high level, coming away with 4 interceptions this season, allowing roughly 30 to 40 yards a game, and only allowing one receiver, that being Stephon Diggs in Week 1, to have over 100 receiving yards while being guarded by the cornerback. Now, last season, Jalen Ramsey allowed a 62.6% completion percentage, which is a little bit high and is higher than he has been the last couple of years, but still not a bad number, while allowing 659 yards and 5 touchdowns in coverage. But a lot of those numbers, as I said, 100 yards and at least 1 touchdown came against Stephon Diggs and the Bills in a very tough start to the season. And after that, he got back to his, elite level play in his elite ways. Jalen Ramsey is 29 years old. He has declined statistically every single year for the last 3 years, having his best year in 2020, being much worse in 2021, but still getting an All-Pro nod, and then being just a little bit worse than that in 2022 and not getting a nod for All-Pro, but still getting a vote for the Pro Bowl. Jalen Ramsey is a great talent. Jalen Ramsey is an elite playmaker, and I have no doubt that Jalen Ramsey, for the right price, would absolutely turn this secondary around. I think Jalen Ramsey, as well as the other player on this list, will be tradable for roughly a first-round pick. I think the 18th overall selection would be more than enough in order to bring in a player of Jalen Ramsey's caliber. He's 29 years old, has 3 years left on a very expensive contract, has gotten worse every single year, but just because he has declined doesn't mean he's bad, right? Just because he's getting worse doesn't mean he's becoming a bad player. A step down from elite is still very good, right? Jalen Ramsey for the last 2 to 3 years has been a consensus top 3 cornerback in all of football, and a step down from that is a top 5 cornerback in all of football. And the Lions could certainly use a cornerback of Jalen Ramsey's caliber. Now, Jalen Ramsey is not the best fit for the Detroit Lions. And yes, from a scheme-wise perspective, he's a very good fit, right? He is a press man corner that plays physical, that doesn't allow separation, and forces turnovers. But I think there's a better fit for the style that Brad Holmes wants to build this team around and how Brad Holmes wants to move this team into a future contender for many, many years to come, and that would be trading for Saints cornerback Marshon Lattimore. Now, originally this was thought to be impossible, as Marshon Lattimore would have a $40 million dead cap hit if cut or released or traded by the New Orleans Saints. However, if it was a post-June 1st trade, meaning started after the new league year was to begin, it would cost the Saints just $7 million of dead cap while freeing up $14.5 million. Now, the Saints need cap space. The Saints are well over and actually have the most cap space to recover from in the NFL. They have the 32nd ranked cap space while being about $50 million over, with guys like Michael Thomas set to make a $60 million hit against the cap, and Marshon Lattimore being a young player but having a lot of cap space against, there is a very good chance that Marshon Lattimore is potentially moved. Now, Marshon Lattimore doesn't have some of the character concerns of Jalen Ramsey. He has big play upside like Jalen Ramsey. He is a physical press man cornerback like Jalen Ramsey, while being significantly cheaper at about $3 million less, about $14 million against the cap every single year. And while Marshon Lattimore has never been an All-Pro, he is a 4-time Pro Bowler as well as the unanimous 2017 Defensive Rookie of the Year. Marshon Lattimore is only 27 years old, allowing just a 60% completion percentage last year, 228 yards, and 0 touchdowns allowed. Now, he did only play in 9 games, but if you were to double that to about an 18-game schedule, which is a little more than what he actually would end up playing, which is about, again, a regular season and a playoff game, that would give you a cornerback at 27, allowing a 60% completion percentage, 450 yards, in 0 touchdowns through 18 games. That is an elite cornerback. That is top 3 cornerback in the NFL material. And it makes sense why the Detroit Lions would want to go get him. He's a little bit younger, but he's still incredibly physical. He's incredibly skilled, has good ball skills, good hands, is, again, I think, an all-pro caliber cornerback and was playing at an all-pro level a season ago before he got hurt. And even last year, playing in just 9 games, he played like one of, if not the best statistical cornerback in the NFL, and even through 9 games, still walked away with a pick 6 and did get 1 interception through those first 9 games. I think Marshon Lattimore would be the perfect trade candidate for the Detroit Lions, not only because he's 27, not only because he's coming off of an elite stretch of games through 9 games of the season, and of course, right, you have to consider the injury and him coming back, but it was an injury that, first off, he was questionable in practicing by the end of the season and isn't a knee or ligament injury as far as I know, so it shouldn't limit his explosiveness or be really a concern to his return. But you're getting a 27-year-old elite corner for $14 million, which is actually significantly lower than the market going value as of right now, based off of some of the big contracts given out over the last 2 years, is cheaper than Ramsey, is younger than Ramsey, has a few character concerns, right? I think that we can all agree Marshon Lattimore is definitely a player that plays with a lot of emotion and can sometimes let his emotions get the best of him on the field. But as far as off the field, has no true character concerns or anything that would cause you to believe he would be a bad trade candidate. And it makes sense for the Saints. The Saints are $56 million over the cap. They have no money. They have no picks. They have very little talent on the roster, and they are a team that needs to go into a full rebuild. So why not trade your cornerback one to a contending team, a team that's willing to give up a first-round pick, a team that has the cap space to take him on, free up about $15 million from your $56 million that you need to free up, and get a top 20 pick to go out and rebuild, whether that's trading up for a quarterback, whether that is getting a foundational offensive line piece, whether that is continuing to build through the defensive side of the ball, right? The Saints are old, they're out of money, and they're out of picks. This trade makes sense for both sides. The Lions need an elite cornerback. The Saints need to save money and acquire more capital. So I think that is the perfect draft. I think that is the perfect trade scenario for the Detroit Lions. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'd be very curious to hear what you guys have to say and what you guys think about this blockbuster trade scenario. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, and as always, go Lions.